Thunderbird 1. Pilot Scott Tracy, first response, capable of light rescue operations, contains mobile control, the operational nerve center of a rescue mission, the fastest in-atmosphere vehicle in the fleet. Thunderbird 2. Pilot Virgil Tracy, International Rescue's workhorse, transports specialized rescue equipment to the danger zone and provides essential support during rescues. Thunderbird 3. Astronaut Alan Tracy, spaceship capable of reaching distant planets and stranded astronauts. Thunderbird 4. Aquanaut Gordon Tracy, submarine designed for delicate operations in challenging environments. Thunderbird 5. Space Monitor John Tracy. Who cares about Thunderbird 5?
Answer: me. I do. I care about Thunderbird 5. Let's flipping go!
Thunderbird 5 is International Rescue's information and communications hub. The largest of any of the Thunderbird machines, Thunderbird 5 is a massive space station. It is capable of receiving distress calls from any point across the globe. John Tracy is the first point of contact for anyone who puts out a call for help, occasionally relieved of duty by his brother Alan Tracy. Whilst all the other hero vehicles of Thunderbirds all have episodes showing off their utility in dynamic action sequences, Thunderbird 5's exterior only appears in 7 shots recycled throughout the series. Being a space station, it never goes on any rescue missions unlike its sister craft, has no cool launch sequence as it's permanently in orbit, and rarely affects the course of a story beyond receiving the initial distress call. Being an immobile static structure isn't automatically guaranteed to reduce coolness. See Cloudbase from Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons. The difference here is Cloudbase is a futuristic aircraft carrier and the base of operations for the heroes of that show. Tracy Island takes these roles in Thunderbirds, leaving Thunderbird 5 as the home of one character, heavily isolated from the rest of the cast and given very little time in the spotlight.
And yet there's something that draws me to this craft. Cards on the table, Thunderbird 2 is my actual favourite, but Thunderbird 5 has wormed its way into my brain and refuses to leave. I've even kept hold of my electronic Thunderbird 5 from childhood. I left the batteries in this thing for 20 years, it's never speaking again. So that's what we're doing today, watching Thunderbirds, again, to see if there is more to Thunderbird 5 and its space monitor. Let's get started. While the series was still being developed under the name International Rescue, a script was drawn up for the first episode, Trapped in the Sky, which detailed the roles of the 5 featured rescue vehicles. The name Thunderbird for these ships didn't come to a little bit later. This obviously included the vehicle that would become known as Thunderbird 5. Both the complete book of Thunderbirds and filmed in Super Mario Nation quote this initial description.
Rescue 5, the super satellite, appears. Its function is to orbit Earth and monitor global communications. Side note, in Subprobe you can see Derek Medding's actual sketches for Thunderbirds 1 and 4 in the background, still marked as Rescues 1 and 4. Thunderbird 5's role of receiving distress calls is necessary due to a change in focus from the organisations that made up earlier shows. The World Space Patrol and World Aquanaut Security Patrol in Fireball XL5 and Stingray respectively are both military organisations larger than our central characters. In both shows, the title vehicle is one of a fleet of several other vehicles that are presumably all having less interesting adventures week on week. Being part of a larger military organisation means you can just start stories with Fireball XL5 or Stingray on patrol, or their enemies attacking either them or innocents. What's more, being large organisations, you can have stories start with characters coming directly to them to instigate investigations or request assistance. International Rescue's big distinction from the other Super Mario Nation organisations is it's not a military or espionage outfit, it's a rescue organisation. That sounds very obvious to say, I mean, clues in the name, and with characters like Lady Penelope you get some of that spy flavour anyway, but it fundamentally changes the way stories unfold. Being disaster relief, International Rescue take a very reactive role in their stories. A disaster needs to already be underway before they can take action. This is compounded by the secrecy angle of the series. If you don't want the world to know where your base is, best not to keep Thunderbird 2 flying about just in case. So you have a super secret team that can only be called into action by those in need and who can't be contacted through normal channels. Answer: Thunderbird 5.
Allegedly, the visual design was difficult to visualise compared to her sister craft.
Thunderbirds 1 and 3 are both basically rockets. Thunderbird 2 is based around the pod system. Thunderbird 4 apparently came quite easily according to Filmed in Super Mario Nation, presumably doing an undersea series right before this one helped. But the space station was a much tougher nut to crack. The design eventually ended up being based upon the shape of the roundhouse used for Thunderbird 3's launch sequence, which is neat. Provides a subtle link for the 2 space vehicles of the fleet. The character of John Tracy, named after Mercury 7 astronaut John Glenn and second eldest of the Tracy brothers according to the complete book of Thunderbirds, was allocated to the satellite, featured alongside it as Space Monitor in the show's opening credits. Thunderbird 5's main role in the story, as demonstrated in Trapped in the Sky, is to receive distress calls and radio them back to base so that the appropriate Thunderbirds can be launched for a mission. In fact, Trapped in the Sky features more Thunderbird 5 than we'd normally expect to see. Living up to its description in the script, you get multiple short sequences of John following the conversation between Fireflash and London Airport, as well as snatches of radio broadcasts from around the world.
As far as I can see, London, nothing can save us short of a miracle.
That's just what you might get.
In fact, it's the very first of the Thunderbirds we see on screen.
5.
Okay, yes, I know. But even in the episode proper, we see this long panning shot that, depending on how the edit goes, you've probably seen a few times already and are probably going to see a lot more of, accompanied by a theme that remains unique to it. It's the only of the 5 hero vehicles to get its own leitmotif, which I believe includes the Ords Martineau. I could be wrong on that one. I like this. Thunderbird 5 will rarely be needed once the rescue is actually underway, so it's nice that it gets a little special attention in this area.
However, even in the first episode, there are already some indicators of problems ahead for Thunderbird 5.
John radios the initial call to Tracy Island, and Thunderbird 1 is launched. Then Scott calls John in the space station for more information. A little odd that John hadn't given full details already, but okay, maybe as mission leader, Scott wants to hear things for himself. Lets him request Thunderbird 2 with the appropriate gear. Then, still en route to London, Scott makes a call back to Tracy Island, where Jeff informs him that John has contacted Tracy Island with new information, but not Thunderbird 1.
Any more news?
Yes, Scott. John's reported in from the space station that a rescue attempt is going to be made.
Which, I get it, Trapped in the Sky is a very weird script in that the heroes don't actually get to London Airport where the danger is until very late on. You kind of need to keep them in the loop, so a scene like this needs to happen, but why is this information coming from Jeff rather than John? When inspected closely, it begins to feel a little muddled. Pit of Peril would retain Scott's secondary call to Thunderbird 5 for more information on what Thunderbird 2 needs to bring, but this was quickly dropped, giving John fewer chances to use his favourite clipboard. In Day of Disaster, it even seems to be John himself choosing which Thunderbirds to send after talking with Brains.
I get the picture. Thunderbirds 1 and 4 required.
Afterwards, Thunderbirds 1 and 2 would often be launched together once a distress call was received, which begins to call into question Thunderbird 1's role outside first response, but this video is long enough, let's not make it any longer.
There's a few curious questions thrown up by Thunderbird 5 and how it fits into the rest of International Rescue setup. For example, why is Thunderbird 5 a manned space station?
I get it to a degree, obviously 60s and space race and all that. International Rescue would definitely need its own satellite or series of satellites to receive and monitor radio signals across the world, but why does the operator need to be in orbit? Tracy Island is large enough, could it not house all this equipment down there somewhere? Jeff has been shown to communicate directly with the danger zone on occasion. Presumably this means Tracy Island could potentially receive distress calls relayed down from an unmanned station. There is the possible reason of secrecy. In The Imposters, Tracy Island is searched during the hunt for international rescue, but nothing is found. It may possibly be easier to hide this stuff in orbit than it would on land. There also may be the matter of legality. We can imagine world governments wouldn't exactly be in love with the idea of a satellite that can and has overheard military transmissions. In the episode Rick O'Shea, it's shown to be possible to launch a small satellite for the purpose of using it as a pirate radio station. As a commentary on Radio Caroline, presumably this places space as international waters. Though the same episode also displays the dangers of being an unregistered satellite, given how vocal Jeff is against them.
What harm does it do, Mr. JC?
It's more than harmful, Tintin. It's dangerous.
This presumably means Thunderbird 5 is registered with International Space Control, maybe as something like a weather satellite or research station. There's also how much of a role it plays in International Rescue's overall communications network. In Day of Disaster, Brains using his watch to call International Rescue directs him to Thunderbird 5, but Alan doing the same in Moving You're Dead directs him to Tracy Island. In Danger at Ocean Deep, communications routed through Thunderbird 5 are subject to heavy interference, putting the Thunderbirds out of contact with Tracy Island. They find, however, that close-range communication is still possible, albeit not clearly. This is mostly adhered to in Attack of the Alligators, with Alan having to repair an aerial mast to restore communications with Thunderbird 5, but with Alan, Virgil and Jeff still able to communicate over the island. Then in Ricochet, whilst Thunderbird 5 is undergoing repair, Jeff is unable to contact John, but is able to contact Virgil and Thunderbird 3. Okay, so maybe Thunderbird 5 is still relaying signals, but it just can't broadcast itself in this case? Then, later in the episode, Thunderbird 2 is unable to contact either Thunderbirds 3 or 5 or Tracy Island, leading to a situation where they can't check if someone is still aboard a doomed satellite. Except they knew Alan and Scott had already saved one of the crew in Thunderbird 3.
They rescued the engineer and we're going back for O'Shea.
Brains, we just assumed they saved him.
How did they know they'd saved Lohman? Virgil and Brains are surprised to hear KLA broadcasting, so they can't have been following the rescue that way. They'd have either heard the rescue or the broadcast earlier. Again, this paints an inconsistent picture as to how vital Thunderbird 5 is. It's a shame in this case in particular, as otherwise Ricochet is a fantastic episode.
It's worth noting that series creator Jerry Anderson wasn't entirely satisfied with Thunderbird 5, but he approved the design to rid himself of an element of the series that he outright disliked.
I hated John as a character, and I was able to stick him up in Thunderbird 5 and leave him there for the whole series. That came in very useful for me.
Anderson regular Ray Barrett found himself voicing the two regulars who appeared least often, namely John and the Hood, who only appeared in 6 episodes of the show. As a result, Barrett ends up voicing far more of the guest characters in the show, including providing the voice for the Duchess of Royston.
I'm doing rather badly, I fear.
As the series goes on, you can quite clearly tell which characters the writers were interested in, and John Tracy wasn't one of them.
The rise of Lady Penelope as a central character also affected how John was used. If a story features Lady Penelope heavily, it's probable that if she needs international rescue to act on her behalf, she'll contact Tracy Island directly, bypassing John on Thunderbird 5. Conversely, if Lady Penelope needs to be contacted about a rescue mission, she'll normally be contacted directly by Jeff from Tracy Island. John and Thunderbird 5 do occasionally appear in Lady Penelope focused episodes, but in a reduced capacity, which is saying something given how little he normally has to do. Even in stories focused on the Tracys, you can feel the writers eager for the plot to begin in earnest, sidelining the necessary but dull step of the call being radioed in. There are a few examples of someone saying goodbye to John at the end of a call, and then proceeding to relay the key plot information themselves. In Edge of Impact, this is paired with cutting away after John's portrait lights start blinking, so we miss the whole conversation. Interestingly, John's portrait lights are still blinking while Operation Cover-Up is meant to be in effect. It's a good thing Colonel Casey wasn't in the room. There are even instances where Thunderbird 5 plays a greater role than normal and John is swapped out for Alan, who ostensibly swaps Space Monitor duty with John every month. Operation Crash Dive is the most notable example, where Thunderbird 5 tracks Fireflash's actual location, enabling the rescue of the test crew, and relaying messages from Fireflash to London Airport after Fireflash's radio fails. John, meanwhile, spends the episode on Earth with 2 lines.
Sabotage again? Metal fatigue?
You've just seen his entire contribution to the plot. The Uninvited is also noteworthy. John initially tracks Lindsay and Wilson's distress call, but it's only after Alan swaps with him that Tracy Island is contacted.
Can you play back the message? Maybe I could recognize the voice.
Virgil Poppet, there's like 8 voices in this universe. This is not as foolproof as you think it is. John's not even present with Scott returning from Thunderbird 3. In this case, the episode was one of the ones extended from 25 to 50 minutes, so John's reporting on Thunderbird 1's added crash sequence gives him more to do than he would have done originally. Once the rescue operation is underway, John is normally out of the loop, contact being maintained mostly between Tracy Island and Mobile Control. Instances of him calling in to report on the rescue are relatively few, but they do exist, such as in The Mighty Atom or Vault of Death. Even in the occasions when he's on Earth, he's more likely to get passed over for rescues in favour of other characters. John goes on exactly 1 on-screen rescue mission, fewer than any other of the Tracy Island regulars except Jeff, Grandma or Carano. Even then, Jeff and Grandma each have an episode placing them in the danger zone, equaling them with John. Brains in particular ends up going on several missions ahead of John. In Season 2, Brains goes on 3 out of the 5 rescue missions, and has a key role in another. By contrast, for John, Season 2 gets to the point that by Ricochet they'll even get his and Gordon's voices mixed up.
In the meantime, international rescue is non-operational.
With all of that said, it's not like John never had any good moments or impact on the plot.
In End of the Road, the end of John's call with Tracy Island is shown so that the big twist of the episode can be shared with Jess, Scott and Alan.
I left the name of the guy who's going to be rescued to last.
Why, who is it?
Eddie Houseman.
Eddie Houseman? Hey, Father, he knows us.
This is episode 14 of the production order. By this point, John's role is ingrained enough that you can start to have some fun with it. Indeed, they managed to work in a surprising number of humorous moments with John receiving and relaying distress calls. He's giving big Lieutenant Fisher energy, if you know what I mean.
Less than 2 hours to go, then back to Earth. I can't wait to dive into that pool.
Calling international rescue. Calling international
I
rescue.
spoke too soon.
I've just got a feeling we're going to hear more about that ship once she's left on her maiden voyage.
Well, I'll be...
Gee, already? My name is Tracy. I'm aboard the Pacific Atlantic monotrain.
Go ahead, Tracy.
There's now 3 of these monsters attacking the house.
Giant alligators? Giant alligators?
One of our agents is sitting on a nuclear explosion that'll destroy half of England.
Wow-wee, that's serious. Give me the details.
Tone, John. Mind you, I can't blame the guy. It's not often he gets 2 calls in a week to the International Rescue Call Centre. A couple of episodes even managed to use John in a slightly larger role than normal. Crywolf, as you might imagine, requires multiple calls to be made to International Rescue, and so John gets a bit more screen time. They even demonstrate his concern when he can't respond to someone. Atlantic Inferno is another good example. Again, the story structure requires multiple calls to International Rescue, and so John benefits.
Why the call then, Scott? I just wondered how things were.
It amuses me to think that Scott and John talk so little that John immediately assumes it's work-related. You even get to see John in his gym jams and dressing gown. Danger at Ocean Deep is arguably the most John ever gets used, even going out on an actual rescue with Virgil in Thunderbird 2.
Thunderbird 2 calling Ocean Pioneer. Come in, Scott.
Even on a mission, John can't leave the radio alone. He doesn't get much to do on the rescue itself, but he does get a fun scene with Scott and Jeff at episode's end, where he argues they should have tried to save the freighter.
Oh, we weren't arguing, sir.
No, we were just discussing it, Father.
Thunderbird 5 also gets 1 or 2 roles that go beyond receiving radio messages. As noted before, Operation Crash Dive is a big example, but the Duchess assignment also shows John tracking a device placed on the Duchess by Lady Penelope and relaying her location to Scott. The only time you see his angry face, by the way.
Thunderbird 5 and John Tracy can sometimes be a little frustrating in the original show, not because they're in any way bad, but because you can sense the potential that the writers aren't taking advantage of.
Obviously, this is an action-adventure show aimed mainly at kids. Why hang around in the space station when we've all tuned in to see cool machines, explosions, and possibly cool machines exploding? But John gives a very different energy to the rest of the Tracy brothers that would have been interesting to see more often in the field. Likewise, using Thunderbird 5 to facilitate communications between parties in danger might have been interesting, or having the station provide more information to ongoing rescue operations. It's quite telling that by the end of the TV series, John isn't even included in the Christmas party that includes every other character, except Parker. Wonder where on earth he got to. By the second movie, Thunderbird 6, they felt able to recast John with a completely different voice.
Father, I've just received a message from Lady Penelope.
This makes him the second Tracy brother to lose his original voice after Virgil. And say what you like about Jeremy Wilkin, but at least he is somewhat trying to recall what came before. It's not surprising given Anderson's dislike of the character, but you can't help but wonder what could have been with John in Thunderbird 5 had either been given a fair chance.
The popularity of the show, as well as the 90s and noughties repeat runs, helped keep the show in the public consciousness. And whilst even 60 years on, the original show still for the most part holds up really well, it was only going to be a matter of time before someone decided to have another go at the idea. In 2004, the live-action Thunderbirds movie hit cinemas. Watching it at the time, for me, evoked no strong feelings one way or the other. Watching as an adult generates a weird sensation of sympathy and frustration with the film. I say sympathy because I don't actually believe the format of Thunderbirds works particularly well for a film.
The main stumbling block is just the sheer amount of characters. You've got 5 hero machines, all with their associated pilot character that you need to find a way to include. You've also got Lady Penelope, who will need at very least a strong supporting role, if not a lead. You'll need to work in popular characters like Brains and Parker. You probably want to give the Hood a strong villainous presence. It's all far too much to fit in and give everyone their due. Something's got to give. The first puppet movie, Thunderbirds Are Go, solved that by getting rid of basically all the cast for the Zero X crew for large portions of the runtime, and focusing on Alan to the detriment of everyone else. Thunderbirds 6 is, for my money, the best Thunderbirds movie, and that pairs its main cast down to Lady Penelope, Alan, Tintin and Parker, with a big B plot for Brains. Outside the introduction, Thunderbirds 3 and 4 don't get a look in. Thunderbird 4, in fact, isn't used in either movie, and Thunderbird 5's role in both films feels minimal even by her normal standards. Added on to that is the fact that the premise of Thunderbirds the series is basically a 50-minute disaster movie every week. All a movie actually gets you is an extended runtime. The biggest criticism you can make of the puppet films is that they just feel like overlong episodes, this bit excluded. Thunderbirds Are Go and Thunderbird 6 do, however, have the advantage of being movies of the TV series. You don't need to explain the concept setting up the film because the concept was one of the most popular kids shows of the era.
This is an additional hurdle that any adaptation now has to deal with. You have to explain how your version is different, but there is also stuff that the audience is very keen to see again and will be very disappointed if they don't. So even though today I don't like the movie that much, I can appreciate why some of it is the way it is.
For example, doing the normally heroic Thunderbird 2 launch as an ominous action taken by the villains feels wrong to me as a viewer. That's the point I know, but even so. But the launch is one of the most iconic bits of the show. You have to put it somewhere. And where else can you realistically fit it into this story? Equally, there are decisions taken that just feel odd no matter how you work it. For example, when the Hood reveals that Carano is his half-brother, it's treated as a big moment, but Carano's only in the family meal and poolside scenes before this, and he's hardly the featured character. It only works as a big moment if you already have the context from the TV series. Likewise, the updated pod vehicles, the Mole and the Firefly I get, even if they did my favourite pod vehicle dirty. But the Thunderizer? For one thing, we call it the booster mortar in this household. Secondly, did they only choose this one so they could put
Time to thunderize
in the trailers?
The movie did follow in the spirit of some of the things that came before, however. As in the puppet feature films, the focus is shifted onto Alan as the lead character, ahead of the other Tracy brothers. And the film follows in best Jerry Anderson tradition by placing characters it's not interested in aboard Thunderbird 5 during the inciting incident, and only bringing them home for the climax.
And again, I get it, if you're focusing the movie on only one of the Tracy brothers, you're going to want to get the others off screen in a convincing way. Attacking Thunderbird 5 very effectively raises the stakes, as well as giving you an easy way to include the Thunderbird 3 launch, which is one of the best bits in the movie. But this is also disappointing. Of the 5 original Thunderbird craft, Thunderbird 5 is the one that feels the most dated in terms of how it looks and operates. It's linked to the world of magnetic tape and analog radio, with its most consistently boasted feature being that it can automatically pick up any radio frequency.
Radio International Rescue. And tell them I'm okay.
Certainly. What's the frequency?
Well, I guess any frequency would do. They'll receive you.
The interior displays on the live-action version certainly look more impressive than before, although the station looks oddly small to me given the size of the station from the outside. It's a pity it only gets one scene before it gets attacked. But the 2004 version of Thunderbird 5 doesn't get any new features or functions, nothing added to make it more interesting. This is true of all the Thunderbird redesigns, it's all just visual updates, nothing functionally new or fun got added. In fact, with Thunderbird 2, arguably her most distinctive feature actually got taken away. Fab 1 is the exception, but even so, we weren't a million miles away from this before. It's quite telling in the animated opening credits, all the crew could think of for Thunderbird 5 to do was bravely move out of the way of an asteroid. Even by story's end, you don't get to see her back up and running properly. She last appears as Thunderbird 3 returns to Earth. Like, I'm sure in the universe of the film they actually do properly repair her, but the exciting "and the adventure continues" montage at the end shows Thunderbirds 1 and 3 only, which is odd. You'd have thought Thunderbird 2 would at least get a look in. As mentioned before, the focus on Alan sidelines the rest of his brothers, John included, which is a bit of a shame. Lex Shrapnel isn't given much at all to do before the attack on Thunderbird 5, after which he's walking wounded, but he plays his scene talking to Jeff from space very well. John ends up retaining that slightly different energy from his brothers. It's one of the better character scenes in the movie. During research, I found out that amongst many other roles, Shrapnel also plays this guy in the first Captain America film. Now there's someone who agrees with Jerry Anderson. In 2015, a new iteration of Thunderbirds premiered. Named Thunderbirds Are Go, the show was aimed more firmly at kids than the original, though nowhere near the levels of the 2004 movie, and was made with a mix of model environments and CGI ships and characters. The show was clearly made by fans of both the original Thunderbirds and the wider Anderson universe, with references to ships going up like a fireball, a Spectrum satellite, a power source called Centurion 2-1, the prototype Thunderbird being called the TV-21, a moon-based Shadow Alpha, a Torchy the Battery Boy reference. They have one character say he's from Slough where the original shows were filmed. They even briefly used footage from the original series. Certain shots during the launch sequences exactly match the framing and motion of their model counterparts. But the crew behind Thunderbirds Are Go weren't slavishly devoted to the past. Whilst the outlines of Thunderbirds 1 to 4 generally were much closer to the original models than the 2004 movie, each craft was given updates to add functionality absent from the originals. I really like these little upgrades. Although I generally prefer the original way things were done, I absolutely get why they were sometimes changed. It's by no means a perfect show, but to my eyes all of the major steps taken to update things were the right ones. The characters were also updated, the Tracy brothers being made more distinct personalities from each other, and the roles of the supporting characters clarified and amended. And arguably there were no greater beneficiaries of these changes than John Tracy and Thunderbird 5. Thunderbird 5 received by far the most drastic redesign of any of the Thunderbirds, which, not surprising, as we said before, Thunderbird 5 was the one most in need of an upgrade.
The original roundhouse shape was shifted through 90 degrees, with the original antenna becoming the main body and solar panels.
The disc shape was turned into a rotating gravity ring, while characters in the central hub remained weightless. This could be a video all its own, but space travel in Super Mario Nation changed in how it was depicted through the 60s. By the time of Thunderbirds, the crew had spent a year simulating puppets swimming under the ocean, which translated well to simulating weightlessness in the vacuum of space. However, this only applied when outside vehicles. Inside, gravity is present as it would be on Earth. Presumably, Thunderbirds 3 and 5 have some form of artificial gravity, although this does make you wonder how transferring between the two ships would work when each's gravity is pulling in different directions. This is retained through the remainder of the Super Mario Nation shows and the 2004 movie. The characters only start to become weightless as Thunderbird 5 loses power. In Thunderbirds Are Go, with the space environments being depicted fully with CGI, the show no longer had to worry about that pesky gravity that comes with filming on Earth. As a result, the show features far more rescue missions for Thunderbird 3 than its free outings in the original show. It's quite telling to me that after the intro two-parter, the first regular episode is set in space, as if to show off what Thunderbirds can do now. As well as a gravity ring, Thunderbird 5 was now equipped with a space elevator, meaning a trip to Earth for John no longer relied on Alan nipping up in Thunderbird 3.
Thunderbird 5 was also made more important by the show's decision to remove Jeff Tracy.
The character had sometimes been used in the old show to provide information and advice to the Tracys on rescue missions.
Right, Scott. Here's what you do. Pass breathing apparatus down to them and keep them alive till Thunderbird 4 gets there.
With Jeff being missing and finding him being made the overall series goal, the role of mission support fell to John in Thunderbird 5. As such, more emphasis was placed on Thunderbird 5 being able to provide information and running scans for his brothers, as well as the ship being able to hack into technology to assist in rescue missions.
This, combined with the more even distribution of Thunderbirds deployed per episode in the new show, means Thunderbird 5 goes from being the third most appearing ship in the series behind Thunderbirds 1 and 2, to being the most appearing ship in the series, even eclipsing Thunderbird 2, although only just. Thunderbird 5's increased role also means an increased role for John, as unlike in the original show, the role of Space Monitor doesn't change on a regular basis. Thomas Brodie Sangster was cast in the role and described John thus in an interview for the Fanderson website.
John is the guy up in the sky. He's the one keeping an eye on everything that's going on. He's very good at multitasking, thinking on his feet, and keeps a very calm head. And for the people that are on the ground doing these mad, crazy rescues, it's important to have that reassuring voice in your earpiece that knows the time frame and what needs to be done. He brings a warm and calm nature to John, still feeling distinct from his siblings, but his increased interactions with them enables a snarkier side of his character to emerge.
I've got the brains, and I've got the moves.
Alan, I've seen you dance.
Kale, please respond.
I know how you feel.
And since you have your nose stuck in everything around here, I'm guessing you were listening in on that call from Parker.
Communications is my job, Gordon.
I really like this take on the character. They even make his favourite show Stingray. Good lad. Although they make John the middle child in this version.
You're braver than I am, big brother.
I know materially it doesn't affect anything, but my brain finds it really hard to accept that fact.
There's a few episodes that show how effective John and Thunderbird 5 can be in stories when they're not being deliberately sidelined by their creator. Spoilers for all of them as we take a quick look.
First up is the episode EOS. In the previous episode, Runaway, a monotrain ran out of control with no brakes. The more things change. And John assisted with the rescue. Incidentally, if anyone ever makes a model railway diorama of this story, do let me know. At the end of that story, John discovered that some old self-perpetuating code he wrote was ultimately to blame, but it had disappeared again. In EOS, the code returns, now a sentient AI calling itself EOS. Integrating itself with Thunderbird 5's software, EOS lures John outside whilst projecting a hologram of John to anyone who calls into the space station.
You may be clever for a human, but I am EOS. I am the Dawn. I will not be stopped.
As John attempts re-entry, the show takes the opportunity to show off just what the new Thunderbird 5 is actually capable of. There are some wonderful shots here that simply wouldn't have been realistically possible with either models and puppets or live action. The story feels fresh and exciting compared to some of the other episodes that had aired to that point, something that genuinely hadn't been done before within the framework of Thunderbirds. After escaping to Alan in Thunderbird 3, the situation becomes dire enough that Scott and John agree Thunderbird 5 should be destroyed if there's no chance of EOS being purged from the system. The episode demonstrates that the act of receiving distress calls can be done from Tracy Island as a backup option, but the series has also already demonstrated the new version of Thunderbird 5's worth. Her loss would still be a big blow to the organisation. As the action reaches its climax, John has the opportunity to destroy EOS, but the AI doesn't believe John when he says he doesn't actually want to hurt her. And so to convince her,
my life is in your hands. If you don't believe me now, you can open the airlock and blow me into space.
Obviously all the Tracys are heroes in a kid's show. They've all had their selfless moments. But this moment is notable as probably the bravest and most dangerous thing any of them has ever done. John directly placing his life in his enemy's hands, well, circuits. And thankfully for John, it works.
I am relinquishing control of the ship's systems to you.
I don't want control, Eos. I want a partner. I want a friend.
Returning characters did exist in the original show, but they were relatively few. By contrast, Thunderbird's Go was much more willing to build up its own cast of recurring characters, and Eos was one of the early examples. Throughout the rest of the series, she'll make several more appearances. I really like the character of Eos. She's used enough to be a regular presence, but sparingly enough that it's exciting to see her. From a story standpoint, she gives John someone to talk to without having to work in plot info dumps, and her bright but mischievous personality plays really well off this version of John. Eos also appears in the second episode we'll be discussing, Skyhook. A weather balloon rises dangerously towards the edge of the atmosphere with its designer Langstrom Fischler and his crew aboard. Fischler here is played perfectly by Rhys Darby, who I simply can't separate from Murray in Flight of the Conchords. Oh look, it's a K1 robot. Fischler has cut corners in every area, and the lack of build quality and safety features ends up putting Thunderbirds 1, 2 and 3 out of action before they can assist. Only one Thunderbird is left to save the day. It took 50 years, but Thunderbird 5 finally got to go on a proper rescue mission. Not only that, we also see her move under her own power for the first time ever. A little bit of that Tracy cockiness even ends up coming out in John.
At that distance, are you sure you can operate the mooring claw with enough precision?
You've obviously never seen me on the claw machine at the local arcade.
I really like this episode. I like it when the Thunderbirds are given visually interesting rescues for their ships. The only thing I can maybe say against it is the physical peril for John ends up being quite similar to Eos. You need more emergency stops on that gravity ring, mate. This wouldn't be the last rescue John would go on either. The show would normally make sure to include John actively in a rescue mission a few times per series. The second series episode, Ghost Ship, sees an abandoned generation ship Eden reawaken and endanger the life of the person sent to investigate it. Rather than launch Thunderbird 3, Thunderbird 5 simply shifts her orbit closer to Eden as she can get there much quicker. Giving Thunderbird 5 the ability to assist stations and ships in orbit again helps her feel more integral for the fleet, as well as allowing Thunderbird 3 to specialise in rescues in the solar system beyond Earth. John even gets his own little suit-up sequence with his exopod.
John, my scans show you're sweating and your pulse is racing. Is everything alright?
Just fine, Eos.
I really like this little moment, showing that as he goes on rescues less frequently than his brothers, he still gets those nerves his brothers don't. The episode also introduces Captain Ridley O'Bannon, a figure who will return later in the series along with Fischler in the episode Impact. This is another good one, a fun Thunderbird 3 story with Alan and Virgil that eventually escalates to a tense last-minute rescue by Thunderbird 5. They'll even give John 1 or 2 episodes away from space. The best of these would have to be The Man from TB5, where Lady Penelope drags John along to a charity ball. He's so awkward and uncomfortable, bless his cotton socks. He's like the anti-James Bond, all the gadgets but none of the suave coolness.
We just bought the penthouse in the new Estrella Orbital. Perhaps we'll see you there sometime.
Considering my line of work, for your sake, I hope not.
Oh.
The episode is also a fun chance to see how Eos reacts to characters other than John as Gordon and Alan take over a space monitor when John is on Earth.
I'd like to see the reports myself.
I'm not sure you'd understand them, but I found a wonderful puppet show you might find entertaining.
The versions of John, Tracy and Thunderbird 5 found in Thunderbirds Go are a testament to what can be done with forgotten and overlooked characters when given to creators who are willing to put in the work to realise their full potential. But the new versions wouldn't exist at all had the originals not formed an essential, if minor, part of one of the best TV shows to come out of this country.
If you want to check out either of these shows, both the original Thunderbirds and Thunderbirds Go are both streaming for free on ITVX. Furthermore, the original series of Thunderbirds is being uploaded to the ITV Retro YouTube channel, and episodes of Thunderbirds Go are uploaded onto its YouTube channel, including one of the episodes we've spoken about today, Ghost Ship. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.